Welcome, everyone, to the Agentic Quality Podcast. And I'm your host, Tatiana Arbuzova. Today, we have an unusual guest with us because he doesn't come from the tech background. He comes from the math analytics background, and he spent a lot of time working on GTM strategies for different companies. And today, he works as a head of AI and RevOps at Chowly. I'm super excited to talk to him about his AI adoption stories at Chowly. Welcome, Aaron.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Can you tell us about your role and what you do right now at Chowly?
Yeah, so head of AI and RevOps, I realize title doesn't always describe the whole story, but it's really about helping the internal side of the business. So I don't work on the product, but helping all of the internal tools that we're using and all of the teams that are using those tools to basically move as fast as they can using AI.
And how did you end up building the internal infrastructure for the whole company?
I mean, it's kind of been a through line of my career here. I've always been in a position to use data and technology to help go-to-market teams move faster. I mean, it started in 2012 using Excel to automate Google bidding, and it's come, I wouldn't say full circle, but evolved as far as technology can take us here to AI.
And I think the common stereotype is that to use AI, you need to be technical or you need to understand how technology works. And a lot of people are still scared to use AI for those reasons. And you transferred your skills basically from math, analytics, GTM to AI. So what skills helped you be successful in the role that you are in right now, that you've been building all your career?
Yeah, I agree. It's a common stereotype, and I think the technical aspect, the only required technical aspect for AI is to be a good communicator. AI operates in natural language, and if you can be a structured and clear communicator, if you can iterate on your communications, meaning, hey, I didn't mean that, I meant this over here, and this is exactly how it breaks down, then you can operate AI. There's really no more barrier than that, and that's exactly how I got here. Just working in a pseudo technical discipline here, the go-to-market ops, RevOps side, you do have to be somewhat technical because you're kind of the pseudo engineering, checkpoint for sales, marketing, customer success, that sort of stuff.
That's very well said. And you also mentioned that your adoption journey was less about the technology challenge, but more about educational challenge. So can you tell us more about how you did that transformation in your organization?
Yeah, that's right. And so I think the education, people naturally gravitate towards new technology. It's not hard to get somebody to try something out, right? And so generating a meme, which our sales team loves to do to keep the hype high, or generating a document with AI is not a challenge. That first touch is pretty easy. There's a low barrier to entry there. But to get people to adopt AI to drive their workflow takes a little bit more education, like how to structure a prompt, how to sort of challenge a decision that AI is making, how to enable your workspace with the right access that you need. So we use Salesforce, Gong, HubSpot at one point, and being able to enable my sort of org team to have the access they need to that data, was a challenge in and of itself. I want people to basically show up and be able to do their job from the console, and then develop the things that they need.
That's a great approach. Get people to do something they're excited about first with the new tool, and then get them excited to adopt it in more ways. So your company encouraged everyone, and not just engineers, to use AI, but also build the AI applications. So, and what happened?
An explosion of applications. Everybody built an app. It's fantastic because we have all of these SMEs, basically experts in their own roles, being like, "Oh, hey, I wish I could automate this part of my job. I wish I had a tool that helped me do this faster," sort of thing. And then, we're an Anthropic shop, so we mostly operate in Cloud Code. And then with Claude Code, they're able to build a prototype for what they want and then surface that prototype to their team, to their manager, to me. And then we kind of go through a process of, is this something we want to scale up to, be robust and sustainable for the org? Is this something that's function limited? And we have a great pipeline for sort of evaluating and piloting things like.
It's interesting. So, and what surprised you the most about people building all of these AI agents?
Well, it wasn't a surprise as much as it was, I didn't realize how deep it would go. So we built our own CS platform. So rather than a tool like Turn Zero or something like that to maintain customer success and customer product adoption, we built an internal platform for that. And we've gone and replaced. We didn't have that platform before, but we've gone and replaced the need to purchase something like that by building it internally. This started as a very small app and sort of, people started adopting it and we started adding more features and we added an agent to it to help drive the onboarding process, which is a big priority for us. And it's become this thing that has a life of its own. It has, feature requests. It has internal power users. It's connected to all of our systems. Now it's the one screen that our entire CS team operates from on a daily basis.
And I find what's interesting for me is that it's not just the tech teams or engineering teams that are building this, right? So tell us more about what these teams are doing, or what is the discipline of these people who are building these AI agents.
It can range from a salesperson. So we have a sort of a divided sales team, BDRs, which are responsible for basically opening opportunities. They do a lot of cold outreach, to AEs who are responsible for closing the deals. So those folks are empowered to build apps as they need, or sort of decide the shape of apps that other people build. And I would think that, our team is incredibly intelligent and very knowledgeable about the space. So it's hard for me to say that they're not technical, but they're not engineers. They don't come from a development background, explaining the difference between, one function or another method is not going to be in their wheelhouse, but they do understand how the process works. And again, going back to that, being a good communicator, my sales team are the best communicators, and they can communicate either to me or to the rest of the org what they need and how they need it to work.
And that's what's fascinating to me, right? Like, I know that I'm not trying to call them non-technical, but for someone who comes from the engineering background, right, who wrote the code, I wrote the code myself for like 10 years, I don't know, many, many years. So for us, people who don't write code, we kind of call them non-technical, right? But of course, the definition of technical is very different in different industries and different companies. So I don't totally understand that in your world they are technical people, but in the engineering world they might not be. And this is what's fascinating, is that they use AI, they create AI agents. Like, look, like if you tell the non-technical person, that go create an AI agent, they would be like, what? What are you talking about? So the fact that you have salespeople creating AI agents, like, that's amazing, right? And then you guys even have your own pipelines, and you even validate the quality of these agents, right? Like, as you keep changing them. So tell us more about that.
Yeah. So I think one of the best examples is like an account enrichment demo prep. So our sales cycle starts with a BDR outreach, like I mentioned, and then the meeting gets booked, a demo meeting gets booked, and it gets handed off to the AE. So there's an opportunity for context to drop between those two individuals working on the same account, the same growing group of prospects, sort of thing. And this is a place where a salesperson actually prototyped an agent, and then that agent then became a production agent. An agent basically takes the call recording from the BDR, takes some basic information or fills some gaps about the prospect, and then does full-on account research, and then presents that as a dossier to the AE. So the AE basically walks into that meeting fully prepared. right? It runs autonomously 24 hours a day whenever a BDR is booking, and then the AE is prepared literally within a minute or two of that call being booked. And the AE can, refer to that document during the call, before the call for, whatever purpose they.
Nice. So it does the job for you, while you're doing something else. And so how do you guys validate the quality of these agents?
Salespeople are, I think, probably one of the most communicative when it comes to, I need this to be successful. The thing that I have here is not helping me be successful. So it really operates very much like a product, right? So we're able to do internal validation, like, hey, is this the right link? Is the link, returning 404? Does the content of the page match the expectations that this is a restaurant whom we primarily sell to? So we can do a lot of like technical checks to make sure we're doing the right research and the right values are being returned in that dossier. But it comes down to the users, the ultimate consumers, to be like, hey, I need more detail on this section. I need a better understanding of exactly what this means. And we use Slack as a public forum to communicate that. So a lot of things are communicated in real time. Hey, this one dossier didn't get the right number of locations for this restaurant. And that's a cue to kick off our DevOps pipeline and see if we can evaluate a fix autonomously or if it needs human escalation.
Yeah, tell us more about that pipeline. I've heard that your pipeline triages issues by itself, fixes issues by itself. So how does that work?
Yeah, that's right. So, we have a number of different go-to-market systems, and the pipeline basically will ingest error messages from all of our known systems, and that, depending on the system, comes to the agent in a variety of different ways. So it'll come as a Slack if we're able to like RSS to their product status page. It'll come as a like a API post if, for example, like N8N logs errors and there's an API endpoint for it. It'll come as an email because Salesforce loves email, loves to send email. So we need to be able to ingest errors from a variety of different surfaces and then triage those errors as like, here's what's happening. Here's what we think the root cause is. Is this agent solvable or is this something that requires human escalation? And the primary distinction between those two is how impactful and how reversible the changes are. So if the agent, let's say there's a flow in Salesforce that the field that it's writing to, the API name of the field got changed or something like that. Somebody somewhere changed this is just a simple example. The agent can fix that. That is a minor change. It's going to restore functionality. It's reversible. That is an easy agent fix. No human review involved. If there's a higher level code change, like let's say, we've been having some issues with Fivetran and Salesforce sync to our Snowflake database. So this is something that requires a change in our schema or an update in our schema, and that's a human intervention. Do you want to add these additional formula fields, which is going to incur real cost from our Snowflake instance? From our Fivetran. So that's a place where you need a human to say, yes, go ahead and do that. The cost is negligible, or no, let's find another way, that sort of thing. So again, try to keep the decision criteria pretty simple, pretty understandable by not just me, but by anybody else who might wonder how this decision was made. Is the change, reversible? Is it low impact? Is it going to incur a cost? These sorts of things are, what the agent uses to decide whether this is something it can fix on its own or if it needs to pass off to a human.
And are there any changes allowed by the agent on their own, or everything requires human approval?
Many changes are allowed by the agent on its own. Yeah. So like if we use N8N as sort of a proving ground for semi-autonomous and autonomous workflows, ultimately they'll get migrated to Cloudflare if it does, make it that far. But an N8N error, which happens all the time, a particular call gets dropped or a post is incorrect or something like that, that is an agent fix all day long. No human intervention.
That's amazing. And do you ever run into the situations when the agent fixes something incorrectly. Like, have that happened before?
Yes. So that there's kind of a longer story there, but the TLDR is that sent me down a path of recording memories. So I know like a lot of agents will have like a session memory, but what I ended up doing is like sort of creating a log of fixes. Did this fix do the thing that it was intended to do? What was the approach taken? Was human intervention involved? So it's kind of like an evaluation of the fixes overall. So the agent has become, the DevOps triage agent has become a little bit more intelligent as we go here. It does cost us some errors along the way. For example, Salesforce, there's a lot of fields with similar names in Salesforce, or some object to object relationships that may not make immediate sense to an agent just reading our production Salesforce. And occasionally the agent will get it wrong and it'll have to be like, oh no, this is this, that's that. This is the thing that you actually wanted. In a case, rather than just correcting the individual session, we record it as, project memory, like a memory store that the agent can refer back to before pushing a new fix. So if it comes upon that situation again, we've recorded the context for how to approach it.
Great. And you also mentioned that the way you look at quality is not just from the functionality perspective, but also from is it even meeting the business goals? Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, I think it's easy to say that like agent quality is the agent doing what it's supposed to do, and I think it's actually like a larger context. Like that's true, and there's a larger context of, is it delivering business results? So the agent itself is given a mission operating within a larger context. We do need to be mindful of whether or not that context is being observed. So I'll go back to the 5-train example, right? So let's do the agent identifies that a change in schema is required, and that will incur real costs. The agent doesn't know what our operating budget is. It doesn't know what the target spend for 5-train is. So that's something that will have a business context, a business impact, but needs to stay under a certain param. So, inferring that context is kind of outside of the realm of the agent. So this is a place where you want to have a human in the loop to kind of mitigate those gaps. The agent needs to have that extra business context. It's not always all known up front. And so that's where you kind of, if I don't know this, don't infer, escalate to myself or someone else.
Interesting that in the past, the quality of the product was all about, does it meet this list of specific requirement? It was a checklist, right? It's supposed to do these 10 things. Does it do it? And right now, the quality is very vague. Even if it can answer these 10 questions, it doesn't mean that it's high quality, because it might answer the 11th questions completely, wrong. And then that's it. You're not meeting your business goal. Or it's not covering all of the scenarios, which is an infinite number of the things that the person can say, right? It's interesting how the quality of the agentic products is shifting. Definition of it is shifting from what it was before. So I find that interesting.
Totally agree. Yeah, I think we're at the dawn of a new era in software, where it's not simply just execute this known list of tasks, but as you say, prepare for the infinite and do the best you can with what you know about the world you're operating in.
Yeah. And let's talk about the, mistakes and failures on your journey to this success. So, how did you start? Did anything go wrong? Did you have to adjust the course along the way?
Yeah, I wouldn't say anything went wrong. Like no negative business outcomes. I did end up making a lot more work for myself by sort of opening up access to everyone. And that very quickly put me in a position of like, okay, we need some guardrails on infrastructure so that the right people are accessing the right systems at the right level. There's telemetry on their system access, so we can see if they did make a right change, who made it? Can we attribute it back to them or their agent? That sort of thing. So we have put a lot of safeguards in place as a result of kind of, all right, everybody, here's the tool, go wild. Which is there's kind of a trade-off there, right? Like if you encourage everybody to use the thing and don't put too much restrictions on it, you get a lot of creativity out of it. And that's what we got. That's how we got the CS platform. That's been a huge boon to the business, right? I think a more cautious approach might have discouraged as many people from adopting the technology as there has been. I mean, today, Chowly is one of the most AI enabled orgs, both on the engineering side and on the go to market side that I'm familiar with. I'm sure Anthropic or OpenAI has a whole lot of AI adoption within those companies, but I think it's still early days for a lot of companies Chowly size.
And I still find it fascinating. So you have no engineers, like people who are actual engineers on your team, and you adopted this across, their team or organization. So that
That's right.
still is fascinating to me on how powerful these tools are and how organizations should not be afraid to adopt them. And Chowly is a great example of that. So what is your advice for leaders, like in the organizations who are working on adopting AI in their, quality development and helping them solve their business problems? So how should they go about it?
Well, learn from me here. I think there's a Goldilocks amount of access. I think you want to put the tool in as many people's hands as possible, and the guardrails on it are the system access that they'll get. Whatever tool you're using is going to request the highest level of access to deliver on the user's requests. You want to sort of precede those conversations with, this is what your eyes, like read only access for production systems or write only access as the auth user. For example, I actually kind of built an internal tool to manage that stuff, but it's I think that's paramount. Do that first. Put the tool in everybody's hands. Give them a little bit of training on how GitHub works, and then let them create. I think the future of work is going to be, a series of context-rich individuals operating a fleet of agents, right? And one person doing the work of 300. And the more that you can enable that today, the better off you're going to be in the future.
To you, if we were recording this podcast 3 years from now, what would the successful company look like that is unusual today?
Yeah, I think about that a lot, and the one answer I keep coming back to is the way companies are structured now is like one person, one role, right? And it's like you've kind of lined up your people into these boxes. And I think with AI, with an AI enabled company, what you're going to get is a bunch of really capable individuals who can execute through agents, and you need business priorities. So more agile than the kind of waterfallish sort of structure that companies are after right now. Here's our goal. Give me 1, 2, 3 people who can go execute against that goal. And then let's move on to the next goal for the rest of the team, right? I think you find these agile organizations are going to outperform siloed, structured, overly rigorous, this is your lane, stay in your lane type of companies.
So one person will be now replacing multiple disciplines, or they'll have a lot more range of skills to deliver on the business outcome. And you mentioned we'll need someone to set the business priorities. So can we use AI for that, or would we need the human judgment for the business priorities?
In my experience so far, you still need a human to communicate the context. Again, going back to being a good communicator, AI is going to do the best job given the context that it has. I actually just read about an instance where Starbucks had tried to automate its AI, its inventory management system with AI, and it completely botched the job because it was built on this low context, very fragmented inventory management system. And it's a good cautionary tale for everybody else. I think the human, for now anyways, still needs to be involved to shape the outcomes with sometimes with context that's hard to communicate up front, sometimes with context that you need to know XYZ before ABC makes sense.
So basically, the advice is for everyone to build their communication skills nowadays.
That's always been the advice. Yeah, just now the stakes are much, much higher. Yeah, I mean, don't overinvest in courses and education right now, because the people who are providing that education, they're me. They're someone who played with the tool more than anyone else. There is a low barrier to entry. You can get a free or very cheap account on Anthropic, OpenAI, Gemini, whatever you like, and just use it. Figure out what it takes to get the results you're looking for. And I think you'll very quickly find that it's a communication exercise. Use prompts to generate prompts, right? Use things like Ralph loops, recursive outcomes to refine what you're going to get. Use tools like GitHub's Spec Kit to spend a lot of time being really specific about what you want, documenting, how that breaks out into issues, and then, run your program away from keyboard. Um, it's all just a matter of how much time you invest now.
Is to learn from others who already went through that journey, right? Because that's the best way to learn through someone else's mistake rather than start from scratch on your own. So, love it. Listening to the podcast with people like Aaron, attending events with speakers who went through the adoption stories, I think is a great way to start on your own journey now. They would like to continue the conversation with you.
Find me on GitHub. Find me on LinkedIn. Always feel free to drop a message. I'll put my profiles in the show notes if that's all right. And happy to help. Happy to take a look at your project. Happy to hear your contributions on any of my open source projects. So let's build this thing together.
Sharing your wisdom and your experience with our audience. Thank you, Aaron.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.